So, my friends, welcome to a new video about stocks and ETFs. Yesterday or the day before, I made a video here about Google, or rather Alphabet. That got me thinking that there are other sectors as well, which are served by Google on the one hand, possibly also by Amazon, and of course by individual stocks. So I did a bit of research, and everyone out there has probably heard the term quantum computing or quantum computers, because there have already been rumors that if quantum computers ever become a reality, they could hack Bitcoin and make the Bitcoin network less secure. Apart from that, I believe that sooner or later, this will be the future. That's why I did a bit of research and, picked out a few stocks. The first one I have here is D-Wave Quantum. There isn't really a long chart history for it. If you look back, the stock has only been around since 2021, then it was pretty dead, with a bit of up and down. It's also one of those things that's meant for the long term. So it's not like I'm saying, wow, I'm going to jump in and out real quick, the stock's going to the moon and we'll be rich. That's not what this video is about, it's more about thinking ahead to the future. And that's something that's still missing a bit from my ETF portfolio, but also from my overall portfolio. That means everything I'm saying here is, of course, important to me personally and also for the future. How do you invest? Quantum computing will probably be the future. There will probably be some huge developments coming sooner or later. And that's why I've mainly picked out QBTTS here. Good stocks, at least ones that are performing, and of course, like the other platforms we've already mentioned, or stocks we've talked about, like Alphabet, Amazon, and so on. Those are all stocks that are already somewhat involved in this area, but they're not necessarily the pioneers. But the problem with individual stocks is always that, at some point, there will probably be a pioneer. At some point, that big company will come along that makes a breakthrough and says, yeah, with our quantum computers, we're the best. Google has already made some moves in this area, and that's where we, or at least I personally, am already invested. That's where the big ETFs come in, like the MSCI World and all the others, S&P 500, NASDAQ, all sorts of them. Google is included, Amazon is included. That's all well and good. All the big players are in there. But how can you ultimately invest in these kinds of sectors with, quote-unquote, lower risk than if I just pick 10 individual stocks and hope that one of them performs? And there are ETFs for that, and just recently, and I only came across this yesterday, there's this quantum ETF from VanEck, the VanEck Quantum Computing UCITS ETF. And that's the only one, at least for now. I think it's available to trade on Scalable and Trade Republic, and it's also pretty new. I think it's only been available since May 21st if I'm not mistaken, something like exactly May 21st, 2025. So here too, people are already investing in ETFs ahead of time. The total expense ratio is still relatively high, of course, because there's currently only one provider. And you also need to be careful, because there are of course other quantum computing ETFs, but those are the ESG ETFs. And ESG, I looked that up for you real quick here. ESG stands for Environment, Social, Governance, which in German means Environment, Social, and Corporate Governance. ESG criteria are used to assess the sustainability and ethical impact of a company. And to be honest, I'm not really convinced by that. When it comes to all this ethical, environmental and social stuff, I completely stay out of it. You can do that in Germany if you want, but when it comes to global companies, honestly, they probably don't care about it anyway. And right now, there are about 5 or 6 ESG ETFs. I've completely left those out. You can check those out too. I think you just have to type in quantum and all the ETFs will show up below. I'm staying away from those. And now, with this VanEck, I noticed it only has a fund volume of 10 million so far. Of course, the thing is, it's only been on the market here for not even 2 or 3 weeks. And the fund description says quantum computing is moving from theory to practical application and promises to redefine the limits of computation. It's the first European ETF that gives investors access to one of the most transformative technologies of our time. Although the first use cases are becoming visible, the commercial success of quantum computing is still uncertain. It really is uncertain. We don't know when, or even if, but at some point it will probably happen, and that's why I want to start digging into it a bit now. It's not going to be the biggest ETF in my portfolio. I'll make a separate video about that, but it will probably happen, or actually, it already has happened, that I'm setting up savings plans for it, so I can invest in it for the long term. So this isn't something where I'm saying, wow, this thing is going to the moon in 6 months. No, it's meant for the long term, and that's what matters to me. What's important here, right now, there are 30 positions included in this. Launch date was May 21st. Fund volume is 11.4 million, and it's based in Ireland, just like almost everything else here. Total costs, as I mentioned, are 0.55%. So, what companies do we have in here? These are the top 10 positions. So, what stands out here is that we have Ionic, D-Wave. D-Wave is the chart I just showed you here. Right now, that's also kind of my preferred stock, to be honest with you, at the moment. It's also one of the companies here that, relatively speaking, has pretty decent numbers, or at least the companies here have reported numbers. Here you can see revenue of 15 million, which is a growth of 508%, so the industry is on the rise. Net income is minus 5.42 million, but still, the numbers are going up. That's why, for me, it's currently one of the main stocks in this sector. Then, Boeing is in there, Microsoft as well. Of course, most people also have those as individual stocks. Hitachi Limited, Sony Group, Bank of America, Honeywell, also a company, and Wells Fargo. Those are the top 10, making up a total of 54% of the weighting. Especially Ionic and D-Wave Quantum have a high weighting here. So, Google is clearly missing from these top 10 here. But in my opinion, that's not such a big deal, because Google is included in pretty much every regular ETF anyway, and of course also as an individual stock, which is something I do as well. So I'm not too worried about that here. For me, it's simply about the fact that there are several quantum computing companies included here. That's important to me. And, yeah, as I said, there are a total of 30 positions. Maybe Google is somewhere further down the list, but at the moment it's not. So that's basically the deal now. These are, for example, all the positions. You can see at the bottom, if you scroll down further, Amazon is also included with 3%. So you can see the top companies at the top are weighted pretty heavily, and then everything else is around 3%. And then, as I said, here's Alphabet with 3.33%, Intel Corporation. So all the companies that have anything to do with it, or even less, other cash holdings and things like that, it doesn't really matter. They're all included here. Yeah, represented. And that's really important to me, and that's what I wanted to show you now, because I said, okay, I'm going to give you a bit of insight into how I invest, which countries I invest in, and so on. One thing that bothers me a little here, though I might go into more detail about this in the ETF video, is that China isn't represented here. So here we have an overweight in the USA, Japan, Canada, and even Germany is included among the companies, but no China. That's the one thing that still bothers me. But for that, I've actually added a separate China ETF to my portfolio a while ago, which I invest in for the long term, and I'll make a video about that too, as I mentioned. And of course, India is also not represented here. Those are actually two countries, China and India, that I see growing significantly over the very long term, but they're still missing from this ETF. If that ever changes, if a new ETF comes out or things shift so that India, China, or any companies from those countries get included, I'll definitely let you know. But for now, that's basically the main point, I'd say. Of course, you can also do it this way. If you're interested in this sector, you can invest in individual stocks if you want to dig a little deeper. But ETFs are always kind of the thing, because if just one of the holdings in there performs, let's say it's one of the top two, the whole thing goes up. But if you invest in a single stock, for example, if you invest in D-Wave, if D-Wave takes off, okay, awesome. But imagine you invested in Ionic and not in D-Wave. So, you know, the one that makes the first move will probably be the pioneer, and that stock will most likely skyrocket. That's important to me. And otherwise, like I said, I mentioned those ESG things. QBTS, that's the ticker symbol. You can take a closer look at D-Wave with that. I've also set it up as a savings plan now. So I am taking that step. I see this company as one of the best performers in the fund, I'd say. But like I said, for me, the ETF is what matters. Otherwise, feel free to just Google what other companies are out there. Of course, Nvidia is also included here a bit. Alphabet, Amazon, D-Wave, Honeywell. Like I said, they're all in the ETF, and they're all weighted pretty equally at the bottom. Otherwise, I'm already individually invested in Alphabet and companies like that, and also in Amazon and, of course, Nvidia. But we'll get to that bit by bit. Like I said, this was just meant to be a little introduction for now. I hope you enjoyed the video, and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Are you already invested in quantum computing? Do you already own any stocks or not? What do you think about this sector? Do you think it's the future, or do you say, no way, that's total garbage, it'll never happen? Feel free to write it in the comments below. Otherwise, I'd say that's it from my side. Thank you so much for watching, and otherwise, I'd say we'll catch up again in the next video. You can also keep posting your stock requests in the comments below. If you have any ETF requests, just drop them in too, or anything else you're interested in. I'm really open to that. I definitely want to start a little series here, and otherwise, I'd say that's it from my side. Thank you so much for watching. Until then, bye bye, and as always, stay crypto.